Hey, what is going on, everybody? It's Hector Martinez, and today I'm coming to you from the Charles Damiano Bruce Lee YouTube channel. That's right. Woo! Here we go. Charlie! Baby! I know you were waiting for that. Charlie, listen, I just want to say thank you so much for inviting me to your place. To me, it's a special treat because most of the time we do the shows from my joint.
Absolutely, absolutely.
So today we're at your place, and it's always a thrill when you walk around this place. I mean, the memories start coming back. I mean, it's just unbelievable. It's like a time machine when you walk into Charlie's house. I mean, he's got stuff from the 60s, from the 70s, the 80s, even to the present day. So just being in your room, Charlie, is such a special treat.
I appreciate it, man. Listen, I really appreciate you taking the time out of your day to host this today for me.
Thank you so much.
You have a chance to interview me this time around. So
Charlie,
thank you so much for coming over today, man.
It's my pleasure. And another thing I also wanted to mention, I'm honored because not many people have the privilege of being in your house.
Thank you, buddy. I appreciate it.
So, you know, for you and your family to open up the doors, you know, for me, I'm honored, and it makes me feel really good, man.
Well, you're always welcome, man.
Thank you so much, Charlie. Thank you. Charlie, you know, I want to say that your channel has opened up this huge interest in Bruce Lee again. And you know, Charlie, there was a time in the 80s when, sadly, the interest in Bruce Lee wasn't as popular as the 70s.
Yes.
So, but the thing is that it takes people like you to really bring the interest back up again. And back in the 90s and the year 2000, it was a little weak. But now, with your channel, bro, I mean, collectors are popping up out of everywhere.
Thank you, man. Thank you.
And it's just so exciting once again to share our joy, our passion, our hobby with the other collectors out there.
Fantastic.
So
I'm excited to get started.
Hey, man, you and I both.
Yes.
Charlie, I wanted to ask you a couple of questions because you've always come across as a very, very passionate Bruce Lee fan. I admire your dedication, your commitment. I mean, you're by far a much more passionate collector than I am.
Oh, thank you, man. That means a lot.
I mean, there's no doubt about it. Yeah, you know, I've been collecting for a couple of years, you know, but the way you collect, I mean, you freeze memories, you know. Anything you need to find out about Bruce Lee, all we got to do is come to your house and it's here. So you know, I got some questions that I'm sure that the fans of your show are interested in finding out. So Charlie, I wanted to ask you, because I'm very curious and I know that the fans out there are as well. When was it the very first time that you saw Bruce Lee, and what was it about him that captivated you and made you the collector that you are today?
Wow, that's a great question, man. So, like most of us, you know, I first was introduced to Bruce Lee back in '66 through the Green Hornet. But that's not when I was captivated by Bruce Lee. That's how I got to know who he was. I started seeing him on the Green Hornet. You know, in those days, in '66, I was only 7 years old. I was kind of more into Batman at the time, right? Which you probably remember. But
of course,
when the Green Hornet came out, there was just something special about the Green Hornet, specifically Kato, and seeing that on screen for the first time.
There are many legendary figures of evil in the Orient. Some people say they are often driven back to action by their own malevolence.
He is back! The legendary Bruce Lee as Kato, the Green Hornet's trusted sidekick. Masked menace of the martial arts. If you're looking for action, he's the one to find it. Bruce Lee is Kato in The Green Hornet.
And then I was introduced to him again in '71 when he came out in Longstreet. And I got even more interested at that point. And I just couldn't wait to see Longstreet because I saw the episode, the opening episode with Bruce. And as a family, we were big on watching TV together, and you know, all the shows in the heydays, Mannix and Hawaii Five-0. And then when Longstreet came out, I'm like, wow, this is going to be an interesting first series. And when I saw the first series of Bruce coming out in Longstreet, The Way of the Intercepting Fist, it kind of blew me away. And I was hoping that he was on every episode.
Yeah,
and, you know, I would always, then the next week I would run to see if he was going to be on again. And, you know, his part got smaller and smaller. And I was so addicted at that point that I was so disappointed when I would watch Longstreet and they didn't feature him on Longstreet.
Right.
Remember that?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I was disappointed, but you know, he only did the 4 episodes, but and that developed a little more interest in Bruce because he was just so special, so captivating. He looked great on film, the way he dressed, the way he moved. I mean, you never saw that before,
right?
From anyone.
It was different
at that point. But what really blew me away, I think, is when I was 13 years old, and I grew up on the Lower East Side on 12th Street and Avenue A, and I know you're from that area as well.
That's my old neighborhood.
Old neighborhood. And, you know, I had a friend, he was like 20, he was older than me and my cousin, and we used to hang out as a group, and he goes, man, there's going to be these martial art movies coming over from Hong Kong. You got to see them. And he was into karate at the time, and he was 20, and I looked up to him because, you know, he was this 20-year-old, and when you meet someone that's 20 and you're 13, it seems like they're so old.
Yeah, right.
Well, they're only 20.
He's like the ultimate authority.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, yeah.
So I like, wow, really? What's that? What's this all about? So when the first movie hit, you know, 5 Fingers of Death, I ran to the movie theater to see it.
Yeah.
And that kind of started the whole Kung Fu craze.
See the astonishing ritual of the fires. Pale before the forbidden ritual of the steel palm.
And then I think the second one was Lady Kung Fu.
Lady Kung Fu with Angela Mao.
That second one that came out?
That was the second. But Charlie, getting back to Longstreet.
Yeah, yeah.
It's interesting you would name Longstreet because, as a, you know, we were young. I was about your age, 12, 13 years old. And when you saw this episode, The Way of the Intercepting Fist, it was much more than just a regular Kung Fu episode. It was philosophical.
Yes.
And Bruce Lee was just too deep.
He really was.
You know, he was too intense, he was too deep, but yet he was easy enough for us to fall in love with Bruce Lee.
Yeah, yeah.
You know? But I wanted to ask you this, Charlie. What was your favorite Longstreet episode from the 4?
I think it had to be the first one, The Way of the Intercepting Fist. Because that's real, like you said, where all his philosophy came out. And I remember as a kid, I didn't even understand what half of it meant at the time.
Yeah, yeah.
When he started talking about, you know, be like water, and he went through that whole speech, and he started...
Fighting is efficient in close quarter, but don't make a plan of fighting. That is a very good way to lose your teeth.
There's so much to remember.
If you try to remember, you will lose. Empty your mind. Be formless, shapeless, like water. Now you put water into a cup, it becomes the cup. Put it into a teapot, it becomes the teapot. Now water can flow or creep or drip or crash. Be water, my friend.
He started talking about, you know, discovering the cause of his own ignorance.
The cause of his own, wow.
When, you know, Longstreet told him, you know, teach me. And he goes, I can't. You know, you have to discover the cause of your ignorance.
Your ignorance.
I discovered mine.
Lee, I want you to teach me what you did the other night.
I already told Miss Bell I can't.
I'm willing to empty my cup in order to taste your tea.
Your open-mindedness is cool, but it doesn't change anything. I don't believe in system, Mr. Longstreet, nor in method. Now, without system, without method, what's to teach?
But you had to learn. You weren't born knowing how to take apart 3 men in a matter of seconds.
True, but I found the cause of my ignorance.
Well, help me find mine.
And at that time, I was trying to understand all that, and you know, only later on do you start realizing, you know, what he meant by that. But
exactly,
yeah, it was built in philosophy, and I think that's what made it so intriguing. It got you to think as well, and
right?
You knew Bruce had more depth than just the fighting that you saw on screen.
You know, to me, when I saw that episode, I mean, as a child, you really don't understand it, but it just shows you how way ahead of his time Bruce Lee was.
Absolutely.
That you actually made sense of what he said 25, 30 years later.
Exactly.
You know what I'm saying?
That's how ahead of a time he was. Exactly.
I mean, back then in 71, I admired his sneakers, his tracksuit, you know, the way he moved. But the philosophy you were able to really make an understanding of it, made sense of it.
Yes.
30 years later.
30 years later.
So now, Charlie, what was the first time that you saw Bruce Lee in a movie?
Yeah.
Not a TV show, but a movie.
Well, that's a great question.
It could be both TV or the big screen.
Yes, yes. I think the first movie that I saw him in was The Big Boss at that time. And that's when I was really captivated, to answer your first question of Bruce. Because, you know, I've never seen anything. And seeing Five Fingers of Death, I was impressed. And Lady Kung Fu, I was impressed. But then when you see Bruce in Fist of Fury, and he finally lets loose,
There have been superheroes, supervillains, and super movies, but there has never been anything like karate and kung fu. And Bruce Lee, he's the man with the fists of fury.
and he fights for the first time.
Yeah.
I mean, he just made all the other actors look 10 levels lower. You know, at first you think, oh, they look pretty good on film and they're doing all that, those moves. But Bruce comes out and it was like a ballet dance when he moved.
No doubt.
I mean, he choreographed everything to the T, and I was just, when I saw that, I was just captivated. And the really thing that made it exciting for me, I remember going with my cousin and my friends at the time, we were 13, is that he was still alive when I saw that.
Wow.
So that was real special.
Yeah.
You see this guy, and now he's become my hero.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And you know he's still alive, and he's in Hong Kong somewhere, and you want to meet him, and you want to see him, and
he's going to make more movies.
He's going to make more movies, and you were so excited, and that's really was special. And you hear a lot of people like, oh, I was introduced to him in the 80s, but he's already passed away. I was introduced to him in the 90s, but to see him in the early 70s when you knew he was still in this world, and he was out there
at the peak of his career.
Yeah, this special individual, that was really what was special about it. So Fist of Fury really kind of did it for me, and then I couldn't wait to see his next film, which
The Big Boss. Yeah, man. I got a friend of mine, Luis Velasquez.
Yeah,
you know Luis.
Oh yeah.
He's a big Sonny Chiba fan, and but Luis, he's his personal favorite is actually The Big Boss.
Really?
So he's always calling me, yeah, Hector, when are you going to find the saw in the head scene? I'm like, hey, when you probably find it before I do.
Everyone wants that scene, man.
Yeah, man.
Now, have you ever seen that scene? Because I've never seen it.
I haven't.
No, me neither.
I mean, there's photos of it and all these, stories about it. I've never seen it.
And some collectors say they have saw that scene, right?
Well, actually, Luis said that he saw the scene back in '73.
Wow.
He said he went to some theater. I don't know. I don't think it was in New York City. But he said that he walked into a theater, and then he says that all of a sudden he sees the saw. You know, Bruce in bed, the saw in one of the thugs' head, and I'm like, what? He says, I saw it once, never saw it again.
They must have took that out real quick.
Yeah, I mean, it would be a treat to see that. I mean, it's only going to be a split second. Yeah. It's not like it's footage,
right?
That you can sit down and enjoy from beginning to end. It's, if you close your eyes,
it's over. Yeah.
But, but still, you want to see something like that.
Yeah, no, that's great. That's great.
Charlie, you show a lot of enthusiasm and a lot of passion for Bruce Lee's Enter the Dragon. We talk about Big Boss, Fist of Fury, Way of the Dragon, Game of Death, but there's one movie that you seem so passionate about, and it's Enter the Dragon. My question is, why?
Yeah, I ask that question a lot on my YouTube channel. I always ask people, what was your favorite movie? And there's some people that, Enter the Dragon's their favorite movie. Others, is The Big Boss, which I love The Big Boss because it was his first movie.
Yeah.
And then there's others like you who love Chinese Connection, right? Or Fist of Fury, right?
Chinese Connection, yeah. But that's my personal favorite.
And I love that too. And that I always tell people is my second. But, when Enter the Dragon hit the screen, and one of my friends came running over to me, and we were in our backyard practicing martial arts, me, my cousin Frankie, as you know, and as kids, everyone, you know, practiced at that time, and my other two friends. And he came back in our backyard and he said, man, Charles, I just came back from the movie last night and the opening of Enter the Dragon. Did you see it yet? I go, no, it came out already? And he goes, yeah, you got to see it. So we went running to the theater, and I saw it in the Academy of Music at the time on 14th Street. You remember that?
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
In New York City.
That was on 14 and between 3rd and 4th.
Right, exactly, 4th.
Yeah.
And then the other theater I saw most of my Bruce films was the Jefferson Theater.
Another personal
on 3rd
favorite.
Avenue, right? In the middle of a block. And
right.
the Academy of Music was a little more upscale theater, right?
It was, yeah.
Yeah, it was a little nicer. And that's where
it was cleaner.
Dragon. Yes, it was definitely cleaner. Was featured. And I remember seeing that with When Cotton Comes to Harlem in a double feature.
Love them blaxploitation films.
Yeah. So I saw Enter the Dragon and I was just blown away. But why was it the most special? I think, you know, again, he embedded philosophy into it, and I love the philosophical scenes with the monk, with the kid in the beginning when he's giving him like a lesson, and you know, I just wanted to learn from Bruce Lee. Yeah. And I think through Enter the Dragon, he taught a lot of lessons in that movie. Oh, and then I loved the vibrancy of the colors and the way, because it was U.S. and Hong Kong production, the film was, the quality was a lot better than the older films. And then the outfits he wore in the movie. Oh, yeah. The brown Kung Fu outfit, the blue one, the white top with the blue pants. Oh, yeah. Man, it just kept me captivated. And I love the colors they used, the yellows and the reds with the flags. Yeah. It just, the excitement of that movie, it had all the elements of a major motion picture. It was a major... And that's what it was, right? It was. And he was fast, he was good looking, it was his own voice. You got the chance to hear Bruce talk. You got the whole Bruce Lee.
It is like a finger pointing away to the moon.
So when you knew it was his real voice, and I
Don't
loved his voice.
concentrate on the finger or you will miss all that heavenly glory.
Yeah. I could just keep listening to him all day. I love his voice. So it was all that.
Soothing,
and you know, even though he was on the thin side, he probably was the most ripped and physically fit that I've ever seen. Wow. And on screen, it just looked incredible to see that definition and him move with that speed. And, you know, he introduced all the weapons from the staff to the double sticks to the nunchucks. The nunchaku. I mean, he just did it all in that movie. Yeah, it was just so. I mean, those are some of the reasons. I can go on and on, but I just, I just love Enter the Dragon, man.
Well, you know, I do too. I mean, one of the things of Enter the Dragon that actually caught my attention was when you saw Bruce Lee with long hair.
Ah, that too.
You know, I mean, you see him in The Big Boss with his short hair, Fist of Fury, Way the Dragon, his hair was the shortest. Yes. But in Enter the Dragon, he had that shaggy 70s type of look. It looked good on Bruce.
It really did.
And it became his signature style.
It really did.
And one of the things that Bruce Lee said once in an interview, Charlie, was, I don't know, you probably remember this. He said, you know, the way people judge you, you know, some people say, if you're a nobody, well, you know, I never really like to use that term because I believe that everybody is somebody. Yeah. But when, let's put it like this. When you aren't successful, and you have long hair, people will look at you and say, look at that juvenile. This is the way Bruce Lee said it. Yeah, you know, look at this disgusting juvenile delinquent. Yeah. Just because he's, you know, he's not successful. But then when you are successful and you have long hair, man, that guy's cool. Cool. You know, so it's something that kind of like stuck with me. Yeah, I mean, I remember him saying that. It's obvious I don't have that problem. But, you know, it's all good.
You know, it's funny you mention his hair because I don't know if you ever done this or if the fans ever did this, but I remember as kids, me and my cousin Frank, we wanted to cut our hair like Bruce Lee. So when I had the long hair, you know, I used to bring the Enter the Dragon picture when he was with the white top, with the hand like this with the finger. Yeah. You know that picture?
You and I did. I did the same thing too.
And I used to bring it to the barber, and I used to go, can you cut my hair exactly like this? And he goes, oh, Bruce Lee. Yeah. And he would put it there on the thing, and I would sit there, and I would see him cut my hair, and he gave us the bangs. And the sideburns, and long in the back. I wish I had some of those pictures, and everyone's hairstyle is different. My cousin Frank's hair almost came exactly like Bruce Lee.
Yeah.
It was crazy.
Well,
but
he actually still wears his hair like that.
yeah,
right?
Yeah, my cousin still wears his hair that way. Yeah.
See, you had luck, because I went to the barber shop. I did the same thing.
You did it too?
Yeah, and I took the photo of Bruce Lee.
Yeah.
I looked at the barber. I said, could you cut my hair like this? And he looks at me. He goes, no. You know, my hair was curly.
Yeah.
I said, I can make you look more like Rick James. I don't think I can make you look like Bruce Lee. But Charlie,
yeah, that's funny.
let me tell you, one of the things I also enjoy about Enter the Dragon was the incredible soundtrack.
Oh.
You know, with Lalo Schifrin.
Yeah, I forgot that. See, there's so many good points that you forget.
Yeah. But one day we'll do another special on the soundtracks. I wanted to ask you this, Charlie. Do you remember what your very first collectible was?
You know I do, and I always like asking other people what their first collectible was. So the first collectible that I picked up on the newsstand in 1970, I think it came out in 1974, 1973, was Fighting Stars, and I actually just happened to have it right here. Woo! And this was my first collectible ever. Fighting Star magazine issue #1.
Right on.
With Bob Wall and Bruce Lee, and you remember that one, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And so that was my very first. I have probably 5 or 6 copies. I have a bunch in mint condition.
Wow.
But that was one of my first collectibles that I picked up on the newsstand. And I remember bringing this to school and reading it cover to cover. And every time your teacher used to say, hey, can you do a book report or something? Wow. I always used to pull out the magazine, and I always wanted to write something from the articles that I read in the magazine.
That you read in the magazine.
This is everything I wanted to learn about back there as a kid, was Bruce Lee.
It was always Bruce Lee.
It was always Bruce Lee. But yeah, this was the first magazine that I picked up, and the paperbacks that I picked up was obviously the Legend of Bruce Lee by Alex Ben Block, right? That came out in '74 also, right?
74, yeah.
And then the other paperback when Linda Lee wrote her paperback.
Bruce Lee, The Man Only I Knew?
Yeah. So those were the first 2 paperbacks that I purchased on Bruce Lee. I remember that like it was yesterday, and I still have those as well.
Charlie, could you bring that magazine out again? I wanted to point something out. This is actually a very rare one. I don't know if you noticed, but this is actually the souvenir that was given out in the movie theaters. Because if you notice, it doesn't have a date, and it doesn't have a price.
You know, I missed that, because this is not the ones I have in mint that are in my collection. This was another one that I think I purchased from a collector. Right. And I just happened to have that one handy here, and I didn't ever even realize that.
Yeah, this was actually given out at the movie theater when you went to see the movie. If you notice, there's no date, no price.
Oh, yeah, look at that. Thank you for pointing that out. Yeah, I missed that.
Yeah. So you got, this is the rare of the rare.
Oh, look at that. Yeah. I love it, man. Thank you for that. Didn't even realize it.
Awesome. Charlie, I don't mean to be personal, but we're talking about Bruce Lee. We're talking about the art of collecting. And would you mind if I ask you, what is the most expensive piece in your collection?
Yeah, I mean, that's certainly you can ask me that. So, you know, what I always wanted was some personal items on Bruce Lee, right? Growing up as a kid. And it wasn't until the 90s that I actually started purchasing some personal items on Bruce Lee. Do you remember when Heather Holmberg came out with the auctions?
Oh, indeed.
Back in the early 90s, I believe it was. And she had the Heather Holmberg auctions, and she featured all the Bruce Lee personal items from the estate that you know, they were auctioning off at the time. So
that was held at the Superior Gallery.
Yes, Superior Gallery. So you know, they had his blue, you know, kung fu outfit. Right, they had the black cat suit, and there was a bunch of autographs there. And I remember one of the autographs in one of her catalogs was the one that, you know, he had his full signature. It was Bruce Lee underneath it. He signed Kato, and he said "Best wishes," and it was actually addressed to Betty. And it was a pretty long piece, and that I would have to say is probably my most treasured and most valuable signature, because there's more than just his signature on it. It's Chinese characters. Indeed. And then it says Kato on it. And then it said, you know, to Betty. So it was a little bit of a writing from Bruce Lee.
Was it to Betty Ting Pei?
You know, it wasn't. But, you know,
imagine.
It just happens to be coincidental that it's the same name, right?
Yeah.
It's Betty, yeah. But yeah, I never really researched what Betty it was. It may have been, because it was in the 60s, it may have been someone that, you know, he was working with it at the time. He was maybe in the restaurant he was at before he did Cato. No one's quite sure.
Could have been a child.
It could have been, and I even asked Heather at the time, and she wasn't quite sure.
She didn't know, right.
Who it was. But that's probably my most valuable piece, and it's funny you mention it because I actually have it listed on eBay just for the fun of it.
Yeah.
Not that I would sell it.
Yeah,
and I have it listed with my painting, which a lot of the collectors have seen before. It's Steve Wallen has made it for me, and that's it over there. And we'll show it later. I'll kind of feed it into this video. But on it has about 10 different autographs of Jim Kelly and Anna Capri and
that's
and
a beautiful
Linda
piece,
Lee and
man.
Robert Lee and Shannon Lee. It's all the signature of his family and cast members.
Jim Kelly. Phoebe.
They're all there. Phoebe Lee, Bob Wall. And
Roy Chow, Angela Mao.
And I brought that painting with me. You remember when we went to the Chiller convention?
Yeah.
And we got Jim Kelly to sign it right then and there with us.
That was great.
Yeah, you still have those pictures of us, right?
Of course.
Yeah,
Jim Kelly, Bob Wall.
I'm gonna put some in. So that's probably my most valuable piece. That painting and the signature together. I listed it on eBay just for the fun of it.
Yeah.
For like quite a bit.
Hey, tell you something.
Not that I want to sell it. I just wanted to see if there was a buyer out there that
if
was
somebody buys it. Yeah. I mean, Charlie, I've personally seen the autograph, and to me, it's the quintessential Bruce Lee autograph.
Thank you, man. Thank you.
You know, because it not only does it have both Bruce and Lee there, it's got the dragon, and it also says Cato. I mean, it doesn't get any better than that.
No, it's a great piece. Yeah, it's a great piece.
And actually, we have it right here for the audience to see. So, bring this close here.
Oh, look at that.
Probably
one of my favorites.
Yeah. And this is such a phenomenal piece. And I commend you, man, for having this, man. This is such a great piece of memorabilia.
Yeah, at the time, you know, Heather was auctioning this off. It was, I believe, you know, almost $3,000 at the time back in the 90s. And now it's worth a lot more because you can't even find these autographs anymore, especially this extensive, with, like you said, his Chinese character name, his name, Cato, you know, best wishes, so his signature, so everything's there. So yeah, this is probably my most valuable piece.
That's awesome.
And I do have a few other autographs, but nothing as extensive as this. I have a signed credit card receipt.
Yeah.
And you know, just as a signature in one of those autograph books that, you know, as a kid people would
the cut signatures.
Yeah. That I have one on there as well. So I have 3 Bruce Lee signatures and a couple of Brandon Lee signatures as well.
That's awesome. You know what I like about this signature is not only the piece, you know, naturally, but also the provenance.
Yeah.
You know, where it's coming from. It's coming from the Bruce Lee estate. It's pieces that belong to Linda Lee personally.
Exactly.
And also Heather Holmberg was the one that auctioned them off. So the prominence on this piece, I mean, it doesn't get any better than that.
And that's important that you bring that up because when, you know, there's so many autographs now on eBay, right, that are fake, and you can see it. And if you're not sure where the autograph is coming from, and the certificate of authenticity, or if it came from the Bruce Lee estate, if it's not there, you always have to question it. Because I know people that got burnt. They bought an autograph, and if they found out it was fake,
and it was fake,
it was forged.
Yeah.
And so you do have to be really careful. And where it came from, like you just brought up, is very, very important to look for that.
Because I always say, if you buy something that doesn't have prominence, it doesn't have a certificate of authenticity, you put it on your wall. And there's days that you look at it and you say, wow, that's a great piece. And then there's other days that you look at it and you say, could it be? Maybe it's not?
It's true.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
That's why a certificate of authenticity is important.
Yeah.
Because every time you look at it, you know it's real.
Yeah, so, absolutely.
Now, Charlie, your hobby, your passion for Bruce Lee and collecting memorabilia has also opened up doors for you to have the honor and the privilege of meeting people associated with Bruce Lee, like his family and students. Could you tell me who was the very first person you met that was associated with Bruce Lee?
Yeah, that's great. You know, I was fortunate to meet a lot of Bruce Lee's first generation students, as well as a lot of his family members. And where I first met them was in the Bruce Lee and Brandon Lee memorial banquets that you know Shannon Lee and Linda Lee were throwing back in the late 90s.
Oh, indeed, yeah.
And it was through the Nucleus Foundation at the time. That's what they were forming, right, to bring back all the first generation students, and that's when they were first coming out with ways to preserve and perpetuate the art of Bruce Lee.
That's amazing.
And when I saw those banquets, I'm like, man, I always wanted to meet Linda Lee. I always wanted to meet Shannon Lee. Unfortunately, Brandon, you know, was passed at the banquet that I went to, so he was no longer there. But when I saw Linda Lee for the first time, I remember going up to her, and she was a very gracious woman. And I went up to her and I said, hey, how are you? My name is Charles Damiano. I introduced myself to her. Wow. I said, I was so inspired by your husband. I just want you to know that. And I was also very inspired by your son. I said, I'm sorry to hear that he passed, you know, recently. And I said, you know, they had such a huge influence on my life that I even named my first son after your son Brandon.
That's beautiful.
And she said, oh, that's so nice to hear. Thank you very much. It means a lot to me. And she said, it's always great to meet people, you know, that were so inspired by my husband. So it was really nice to meet you, Charles. And she really took the time to talk to me and get to know me a little bit. And I told her that story. And then I took a picture with her, which I have with Linda Lee. And then I looked over to the side, and there was Shannon Lee.
That's awesome.
And at the time, she had a little bit of a cold, so I went up to her expecting the same nice, gracious introduction. and I said, hey, Shannon, how are you? I just met your mom, and I'm a big fan of your dad and your brothers. I said, do you mind if I take a picture with you? And at first, she says, you know, I'd rather not. And it took me off guard when she said that.
Wow.
And I said, oh, really? I really mean so much if I can get a picture with you. I always wanted to meet you. As growing up as a kid, I always just seen you, all the pictures with you, your dad, and Brandon. It would really mean a lot to me. Do you mind if I take a picture?
Yeah.
And at first, she looked at me, and she was like, you could see she didn't want to. And then she finally said, you know what? Okay, let's take it. And it was a little bit of a hesitant. And then I found out she had a really bad cold, and she wasn't feeling too well.
Oh, that's
so maybe that had something to do with it. But she did break down, and we have a nice picture of me and her together, which I'll inject into this film so people could see the picture of Shannon and I. But yeah, both of them were very, very gracious and very nice, and those were the family members that I met. And then at that same seminar, I was fortunate enough, because I studied Wing Chun, you know, growing up as a kid when I was 13 for a number of years. And then I went back to Wing Chun with a Wing Chun instructor at the time in the 90s called Sifu Chow. He was on 23rd Street and Lexington Avenue after studying with Duncan Leung. When I was like 15, 16 at 3 Great Jones Street in Manhattan, when he came just from Hong Kong. But I went over to Jesse Glover because he was doing, they had all the first generation students doing seminars.
That's insane.
And I said, Jesse, I said, I always wanted to meet you, man. It's a pleasure meeting you. How you doing? And he was teaching, you know, some modified Wing Chun at the time that he learned from Bruce. And I said, you know, I studied Wing Chun for a number of years. Do you mind if we do some chi sao and some roll? I'd like to feel your energy.
Yeah.
He goes, yeah, certainly. So I'm rolling with Jesse, and I thought he was going to take it easy. And the guy just starts wailing on me. Getting in my chi sao, and we're trying to do some techniques, and he was so good. So the first thing that came to me, and he kept hitting me in my chest and hitting me in my chest, because I guess he was finding holes. And you know, in Wing Chun, you have this forward energy, and he kept smashing me in my chest. And all I could think of is like, man, if he's this good, and he learned from Bruce, can you imagine how good Bruce was?
Of course.
In those days, teaching it to Jesse back then. What they thought of him, because I thought Jesse was like at another level, and I was studying Wing Chun maybe 6 years already.
Wow.
And I thought I was pretty good, and I learned from 3 different Wing Chun instructors, pretty known instructors, and then I rolled with Jesse, and it was just like another level.
Yeah, no, these guys are, they're from another planet.
I mean, especially because learning from Bruce, right, who was from another planet. And it just, that was what I thought. I was like, wow, if he's this good, I just could imagine how great Bruce Lee was at that time.
You know, I'll be honest with you, I've only met maybe a few, never met any, you know, as extensive as you have. But my impression when I see these guys, I'm sure that if you train with them personally, you're going to see people who are advanced by decades. You know, by decades. That's why Bruce Lee, as a young man, he had a big mouth. And he put a lot of these people down. He said, your stuff doesn't work. It's garbage.
Yep.
But he could back it up.
Absolutely.
You know, he could back it up. So when you train with these students, right then and there's the proof that Bruce Lee was advanced.
Yes.
Because if they were as good as what you say, and they were students, imagine the master.
Exactly.
You know, so...
Exactly, yeah. So those are some of the... And then I met Ted Wong, who was also, you know, if I were to mention one person that actually moved like Bruce, and, you know, just seeing him move and doing his footwork and throwing punches and kicks and punches, you look at him and you go, man, that's Bruce Lee.
Wow.
I mean, he moved exactly like Bruce
Just
Lee
like
did.
Bruce, yeah.
And I remember going up to him, and I did a number of seminars with Ted Wong, and I said, man, Ted, you are so good. I just can't believe how proficient you are.
Unbelievable.
In JKD. And he looked at me and he goes, to be honest with you, Charles, he goes, I've been practicing this now since Bruce has passed, over 30 years consistently.
Wow.
From what I learned from Bruce Lee. And he goes, to be honest with you, I'm not even at the halfway point of to where Bruce was in 1973. He goes, that's how good he was.
That's how good he was, yeah.
And to me, Ted Wong looked like at another level when I saw him move, and I would feel his punches on the focus mitt, and I held kicking shields for him, and the guy, for being so little, had such amazing power and speed.
Was powerful, man.
One, two, three, we start here. Here, back to here. Yeah. Okay, here, first. Okay, one move here. You will go. Okay, then start the motion easier. You make the motion first. So you feel the momentum. Also, you can move it.
But yeah, he said it. He goes, I'm not even a halfway, and I've been doing this 30 years past Bruce's death, and he goes, I'm not even half to where he was. That's how good Bruce was.
I mean, when you listen to Dan Inosanto, Ted Wong, Joe Louis, you know, these guys are, you know, top of the line martial artists, experts in combative arts. When they talk that way about Bruce Lee, I mean, the guy must have been just a phenomenal specimen.
Juggernaut, right?
Yeah,
I mean, because you're hearing this from the best.
Yeah.
And
I mean, you know, you see a lot of... I love Mike Tyson, Muhammad Ali, of course. I mean, these guys, Sugar Ray Leonard. But no one talks about a fighter, about an athlete, about a martial artist the way they talk about Bruce Lee.
You're 100% right.
You know, they have him as a, like, almost superhuman.
Yeah,
you know, somebody from another planet.
And that's what people think of him.
Charlie, I wanted to ask you, not only has Bruce Lee inspired you to collect and also to take that trek and go out there and meet people associated with Bruce Lee, he's also inspired you health-wise. Yeah. Maintaining your physical fitness, your body, taking your body to other levels that you never thought you would do before. Could you tell us a little bit about that contest, that bodybuilding contest you were involved with?
Certainly, yeah.
Because I've seen the pictures. They're very impressive.
Thank you. Yeah, you know, when I was going to college, you know, I was studying accounting at first, and, you know, I just found it so boring. And, you know, I wanted to do something that was related to Bruce, and I know Bruce was big on nutrition and health and physical fitness and staying in shape, so I immediately switched my major to nutrition and health because I wanted to find out, you know, everything I could about health and eating right. And, you know, and that was inspired by Bruce because he would look great and worked out all the time. Indeed. So I wanted to learn the nutrition aspect of it. And then I entered bodybuilding shows, again, all inspired by Bruce. I got my body fat down to, you know, 7% at one point, which I'll show some of my bodybuilding pictures, you know, that I competed at in the 90s. And then I took it even a step further, and you know, in the late 90s there was a mail order business where you can send in before and after pictures of yourself. Mm-hmm. And I became so into fitness and health and weight training, again, all inspired by Bruce Lee, that I said, hey, you know what, let me see if I can win this transformation contest. And it was how much you can transform your physique in a 12-week period of time.
12 weeks?
12 weeks. So
wow.
at the time I was, you know, maybe... I think I was 17, 18% body fat. My body fat got a little higher. I'm usually hovering around 10%, 11, 12%. Mm-hmm. And in 12 weeks, I got down to 7% body fat. My weight came down to 180. I was really ripped. And, you know, it was funny. Every time I train, I always think of Bruce's physique. It was one of the physiques that inspired me, like Frank Zane. And prior to that, you know, Steve Reeves were my heroes that I looked up to prior to Bruce. And I always wanted to kind of, you know, get a physique similar to Bruce, because I just thought he had the ultimate physique and body. But yeah, all that was inspired by Bruce, and I won the Body for Life challenge that year out of thousands and thousands of people who enter, and I won a $100,000 endorsement contract for Bill Phillips, who came out with the system called Body for Life. And it was a certain way to eat and train, and how many days you do cardio, strength training, and eating right. And to this day, I still follow that program. And again, that's something that was all inspired by Bruce Lee. And when I ask people, how did Bruce Lee inspire you? That's one of the ways he inspired me, right? Not only to study martial arts, but to stay physically fit, know what I'm eating, doing my cardio. He was big on running. And it became part of my lifestyle. And
beautiful,
again,
man.
It was our hero that, you know, had that kind of inspiration on people.
I saw the photos, and you know, you meet people that are inspired by Bruce Lee in as far as, you know, getting themselves fit. But some people aren't 100% complete. Yeah. You were complete.
Thank you, man.
I mean, you developed every part of your body, the way Bruce Lee used to say it, every part of your body. You know, you had your chest, your abdominals, your lats were very impressive.
Yeah, you had the V shape.
The V taper.
And
your legs and your calves. You look at the legs, because a lot of bodybuilders, they train from the waist up. But then, you know, from the waist down, I mean,
that's,
you know,
so
like
true.
Little toothpicks.
Yeah,
but,
that's so true.
But you were a complete
Thank you,
bodybuilder.
man. I appreciate it. I appreciate it. Yeah, the lats that Bruce had, I mean, that was one of the first things I wanted to develop, because remember in Return of the Dragon, right, when he did that little lat spread and he pulled the lats out, and you see that V shape, it looked like, people were saying at the time, it looked like a cobra.
I thought he was going to fly.
I know.
You know, he was going to fly out of the screen.
And I remember I was 14 years old. I went home and I started doing bent over rows for my back, and I read what exercises work that muscle group, and all of a sudden you start getting a V shape like Bruce Lee. So there's ways to develop your body, and you know, you learn all that along the way. But yeah,
you were blessed also, because you know, your genetics are good.
Thank you.
You know, you got good genetics, and but I did see the transformation photos, and still very impressed.
Thank you, brother.
Still very good. Charlie, I got one more last question.
Yeah, man, this is fun.
So, do you think that Brandon Lee, if he would have lived longer, do you think Brandon would have been the official heir of his father?
You know, I love Brandon Lee, and I know you love Brandon Lee, and I love your t-shirt, by the way, the crow there. Beautiful. I know you're a big Brandon Lee fan, and so am I, especially from the movie The Crow.
Yeah.
But would he have been the heir to his dad? You know, that's a great question. I think he was on his way. You know, and a lot of people loved The Crow, right? And my favorite Brandon Lee movie was Rapid Fire.
Oh, yeah.
Just because I was looking for a little bit more of a martial art movie, right? When Brandon came out, because you start seeing a glimpse of his dad, right? And his good looks, his physique, the way he trained, and you know, he trained with Danny Inosanto and Ted Wong, right? So he had a little bit of his father's style.
Indeed.
And so I really loved Brandon Lee, and I was hoping that he would become, you know, the next Bruce Lee, but unfortunately, you know, he didn't want to be caught in the shadows of his dad, right? As much as his dad helped propel his career,
yeah,
he didn't want to be known as Bruce Lee's son, right?
I commend him for that.
Yeah, I do too. He was looking for his own identity, and I commend him for that as well. Yep. But you can't take away the fact that it was Bruce Lee, and you know, Bruce Lee was his dad, and,
of course,
and he should have, you know, took advantage of that, which I think in Hollywood they saw that, and you know, they propelled him in the movies. But yeah, I think he was on his way. I think he would have been the next largest you know, action star out there. Bigger than Van Damme, bigger than Seagal, bigger than Chuck Norris.
Agreed.
Bigger than all the actions, Jet Li, that was there. I think Brandon had a huge career of him, and I think he would have been the biggest star out there. Not only making martial art movies, but The Crow is a perfect example of the acting ability he had. And I think you would have seen a lot more of those kind of movies. Yeah. Maybe some martial art movies, maybe a little more movies in drama, because you know, he studied acting, right, for a number of years in college. But yeah. What do you think? Do you think he would have been the heir to Bruce?
Well, you know, like you said, I mean, you answered the question perfectly. Maybe not the heir. Yeah. But there was definitely a lot of Bruce and Brandon. Yeah. And but Brandon was more diverse. Brandon was tall, nice-looking kid. I couldn't really see Bruce Lee in a romantic film, but I could see Brandon.
Yes.
I could see Brandon, you know, as the leading actor in. I mean, yeah. I mean, I enjoyed him better than Van Damme, than definitely Steven Seagal. I really don't like Steven Seagal. No, you know, no disrespect.
Exactly.
But Brandon was so much better than those guys.
Yes.
I mean, I could sit and watch Brandon over and over again.
Yeah, same here, man. Same here.
One other thing, Charlie, what's your advice that you would give out to the young, up-and-coming Bruce Lee collectors, someone who's interested in the world of Bruce Lee, that they want to start a collection of their own? What's the advice that you would give them?
You know, I think I always love when I'm reading the comments on my YouTube channel, and I meet a collector who I always say, so how were you introduced to Bruce Lee, and you know, when were you first introduced to him? And I love when I hear you know, a younger person say, hey, my dad introduced me to him when I was growing up as a kid and back in the 90s, and my dad was a big Bruce Lee fan. You know, his dad is probably our age now, right?
Yeah,
He's just starting out. He's like in his 30s now, 40s. Yeah. And I love hearing that. And I always say, wow, you had a great dad to introduce yourself to introduce you to such a wonderful person like Bruce Lee, because you can learn so much from Bruce Lee, right? I mean, the guy had the knowledge. He knows about life, how to get ahead, success. And if you listen to his philosophy, I mean, you can use a lot of his philosophy and how you want to live your life. Yeah. And I think he's a great role model for a lot of these kids. So I always commend kids when they say, my uncle introduced me to him, or my dad introduced me to him. I think everyone at one point should be introduced to Bruce Lee, because he was so much deeper than just being a martial artist.
Indeed.
And I think we all can learn from him, and through his writings and books, they're out there. I mean, I would pick up the Tao of Jeet Kune Do. You know, there's so many great books on Bruce Lee. I think Matthew Polly's last book is very well written.
That's a great book.
Bruce Lee, A Life. If you want to find out about Bruce Lee, you know, look into Matthew Polly's book on Bruce Lee, and he was just, you know, so much more than a martial artist. So I would just say, hey, get into it, read his books, and from there you're going to want to start collecting figures. There's lots on eBay you can find these days. So there's so many. Amazon has a lot of good material on Bruce Lee now, so you can find Bruce Lee material almost anywhere. Yeah, you can even go to my website, thebruceleecollection.com. I have a lot of more vintage stuff, so if you want to get into more of the vintage collectibles, I'm big more on the vintage items from the 70s and 80s and 60s that came out. I like more of the pre-death stuff these days, more than the newer stuff.
Than the new stuff,
So, but yeah, there's so much out there on Bruce Lee.
That's awesome. Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, Charlie, I just want to say thank you so much for, once again, for allowing me to come into this treasure trove.
Thank you, man.
Of Bruce Lee. And your family, I love your family. They always treated me like family, and it's just an honor for me to be here and turn the tables around,
well, listen,
and
man,
interview you.
Yes. Well, I want to thank you for coming by and doing this, because I know a lot of the fans, you know, wanted to see the tables turned, and me getting interviewed instead of me always interviewing those. So thank you so much for taking time out of your day to do this for me. So
appreciate it.
And guys, I want to thank you guys once again for joining us, Hector and I, today. I hope you guys got a lot out of this program here today. And for those of you who are new to the channel and haven't subscribed, please subscribe to the channel. And if you like what you saw today, and I know that you did, please give the video a thumbs up. And if you have any other questions for me or Hector, please leave a question in the comments. I'd love to answer any questions that you may have, either on my background and how I got started in collecting. Maybe there was some things we didn't cover here in this interview. Feel free to ask me, and I'll be more than happy to answer. I answer every comment that I can through the YouTube channel. And I know if you have any questions for Hector, Hector is one of the biggest collectors and one of my very, very good friends. One of my best friends, actually. So thank you so much for coming here today. So please feel free to reach out to Hector and I. And once again, guys, thanks for joining us here today.
Thank you so much.
Peace out.
Peace.
All right, man. That was great.